welcome to the 116th edition of the CU Town Hall. Started during the pandemic as just an opportunity to get people together to talk about what works, what doesn't work, and continued here 4 years later. So pretty cool. And today we have a really incredible guest, but let me get through our sponsors and whatnot here. She's already been talking. First of all, normally our hosts, myself, John Best, I'm the CEO of Best Innovation Group, for those of you that are new here. And we also usually have the one, the only, the man, the legend, the man who invented, credit union broadcasting, really, Mike Lawson, who I've known for a long, long time. And if you haven't gone out and seen anything on CU Broadcast, it's just can't miss stuff. You've got to stay up with him because he's just on top of everything and such a good interviewer. So Mike, if you're out there, we love you and we hope you have a good day. I think he's out at the PSCU conference this week, actually. So let's which they never invite me to anymore, Ann. It's really sad. Which I told Chuck, and Chuck said, we'll have to fix that. And I said, okay. So speaking of great conferences, CUNA Councils, America's Credit Union, one of our sponsors, and we're very thankful to have them. Recently just did the GAC conference. I think I have the tech conference coming up and a few others. But if you're new to credit unions and you're just trying to come together around what ideas, other ideas, what's going on, the first thing you'll discover is that credit unions are collaborative. And so if you go to a conference, it's not like, oh, look, there's the guys from, such and such credit union, don't talk to them. It just doesn't work that way. We're all friends. We all talk and we all try to share solutions. And so that's one of the most incredible parts of being part of this industry. So if you haven't gone to any of the CUNA sites, I highly recommend it. The councils are a great place to get to know people, to learn solutions to things, to see new products. And they're always just really well done. So hats off to America's Credit Union. Aluma. Well, you know what, Ann? Fraud's on the rise. I don't know if you've known that, but I think you were with me when we talked out at the Innovation Club in San Diego just recently. No, not San Diego. We were in Huntington Beach at Connecta. Wonderful place, Connecta.
Yeah.
And everybody in the room, all the credit unions, identified fraud as an ongoing issue, a bigger ongoing issue. As a matter of fact, some of them had just turned on FedNow and had to almost immediately turn it back off, which was interesting. So one way to help prevent that is to have step-up biometrics and to have, all these security things. But the problem with that is they're all so intrusive. I tell you what, if I have another thing try to tell me to get my authenticator code out. Oh, and you know what I learned, Ann? This is horrible, but just so you know, if you get a new phone, even if you back up all the RSA, and being a consultant, I have like 50 of these things. I have phones everywhere, that because I can't keep them all on the same phone because they don't work right if you have them. That's 3 just in this little spot. And there's more over there because I have to use different ones because they collide with the different VPNs and the different stuff. But if you get a new phone, it wipes your authenticator. It wipes everything. You just have to start over, even if you backed it up and restored it, which is unbelievably hard. It almost makes you never want to upgrade again. But you know who could solve that problem? Aluma Labs. That's right. Aluma has a very transparent process. It does voice authentication, and it's passive because the first place they start is the call center. They got to get the information. The good news is I have yet to see a breach that was related to some sort of digital, connecting and pulling in passwords or something like that. It's always been a big group of social engineering or phishing or something like that seems to be how this happens. And one of the first things they do is they'll call in and try to impersonate the member. Now, new and improved, they can, let's say they have a bad accent because they're not from this country. Well, they can go out and use an AI to talk to you. And I know for a fact that's already been happening. But Luma Labs won't have it. No, I know it won't have it because I tested it. So check it out. Good stuff. Talk to Illuma and Lind. It's a great group. And they're quick at installing stuff and they're always thinking forward. So, and finally, speaking of thinking forward, my gosh, we had, Typhone, who sponsored our innovation club. They brought in their guy who is working on their AI processes, particularly not AI as in let's implement AI, but even understanding how to train AI, which was really fascinating. We had an incredible conversation with Chris Swath is what I want to say. Chris Nath, Dr. Chris Nath, which works there. Keith Riddle was there. It was a great time. But these guys are thinking ahead. I always said, people keep asking me, "Are you ever going to build another home banking system?" And I say, no, there's no need. There's great systems out there. The challenge is they're all kind of, that solution needs to evolve, and I think Typhoon's putting effort into that. They're really looking with their Infinia platform to sort of break the mold of the common home banking. And so I'm very excited. And they're starting off with their FedNow platform, which includes the security aspects of it, which is very important. So if you're thinking about FedNow, visit typhoon.com. All right, I'm done selling stuff, although those are all great things to sell. Let's introduce one of my very favorite people in the world, who I got to meet very early on in my career and has been a longtime supporter. And today we're going to hand it over to her to talk about AI readiness in part two. It's Miss Ann Legg. Ann, where are you today? Did you say you're in a weird time zone or something?
No, I was just saying that I've been jumping time zones, and I am happy to be back in my home time zone, which is San Diego, California.
Uh,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
I can imagine. Well,
it is.
uh, you are the leader and CEO of Thrive Strategic Services. You
Yep.
work with Crayons on a lot of different things, data readiness, AI. I know you're fantastic in the marketing space, and lately you've been tackling this AI readiness piece, and I found that fascinating, and that's why we invited you on. And I'm excited today to continue to go through that, to talk more about, to hear you talk more about what's out there, and because I think there are a lot of stumbling blocks. Think about a
Yeah.
merger, right? You go through a merger, and the merger is just constant, new stuff. It's like, oh, you get past this little data bubble and then the next thing, and that's how they work, right? It's one thing after another. And I think that's going to be a similar process for training an AI with your data, where, okay, we got all the data together, you run it, and then you talk to the AI, and it does great, but it barfs up gobbledygook for this or that. And then I think it's back to the drawing board on the data. And
Right.
so I think
Right.
this is very appropriate for where everything's going. So I'm excited to turn it over to Ann. We also have a giveaway today. That's their way of telling me not to forget about this by changing the slide. So I used to have to present at this meeting all the time, Ann, for Westcom. It was me and Kevin Sarber
Oh,
and
cool.
Rob Guilford, the just beloved
Yep.
man who was one of my mentors in this industry. If he wanted me to go faster, I'd be standing in front of the slides and he was moving them. And I'd look back and I'd be like 4 slides forward because they're like, what you're not talking about. So I think my staff has figured out the same way to do it. But anyways, today we're giving $100 Apple gift card away, which is very
Nice.
exciting. You can see they come in very exciting colors. Apple, if nothing else, they know how to do design. And this is sponsored by the Williams Mills Agency, your place for fintech. And those guys have been great to us. We've been really enjoying working with them, and they've introduced us to a lot of forward-thinking people and who are providing incredible solutions. Agent IQ was out with us at Innovation Club. I think you saw their demo. I thought
Yeah.
that was just incredible. The agent or the MSR carousel where you can
Yep.
pick a MSR to go talk to, and they get to put up their little preferences and what they do. It's really cool. So,
Very.
Mills is helping our industry in ways that, kind of behind the scenes that most people don't realize. And I'm real thankful for their help here. So that said, let's see, make sure. Oh, good. It turns out I'm
Okay.
done. Now it's on to you.
Excellent. All right. Okay. Let's make sure. There we go.
And
Okay.
I'm having a little bit of bandwidth issues. So since you're talking, I'm going to turn off the camera. But if I do speak, I'll turn it back on.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all again. This time, we had a wonderful conversation last time. We talked a lot of different things and we went a lot of different ways. This time, I want to land up and kind of have a little bit more of a formal conversation. Few things. This deck will absolutely be available afterwards. I'm not sure if we'll get through it all, but I want to get through the portion one here, which is let's understand AI readiness. What are the things to consider? How do we understand that? I do have some credit union, use cases on how they're using it. If we have time permits, that's fantastic. But let's jump into it. So first things first, just a quick flyover of me. John did that beautiful introduction. Let's just talk about it in really easy terms. Term number one, 600, that's the number of credit unions we've worked to help launch their data journeys. 31 is the number of years I've been in the industry. Eek, 17 is the number of years that I've been in the C-suite. And 1 is that book that you're seeing, Big Data, Big Climb. It is the only book on data activation that we have in our industry. It is also a book that I use as a textbook where I teach at both the Southwest CUNA School of Management as well as a class I lead as well for just helping you build out the foundations of data. The last thing that's kind of crazy about this book is it's actually in our industry's library, and it's in their, in the Credit Union Museum, and it's in their research library. All right.
Oh, very cool.
Right?
So you sound like what's that scene from? There's a movie where, and da 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 is the like some guy asked for a number,
Oh,
and
right, right,
and da
yeah.
da da is the number of kids I have, and da 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 is
Exactly.
the number of times
Oh,
I've been divorced. Like those numbers. That's what you sounded like for a second, maybe.
I did, and I'm trying to remember. I know which movie it was, and it was
Aaron Brockovich. That's it.
yes, Erin Brockovich. Okay, but luckily my numbers hopefully weren't as dramatic as hers.
No, no.
Let's jump into the next bit here. So come on, there we go. All right, so let's walk through 2 things. I want to formalize kind of what is the industry impact of AI. I want to just kind of highlight some areas there. Then I want to walk around. Okay, let's talk about the readiness. So first things first, I mentioned this the last time. In the bottom of this, I sourced the document from Mitchell and Associates, and that's called Underground Generative AI and Credit Union Values White Paper. It's a lovely, robust piece. It's about 74 pages. I can definitely make sure we have the link for that so that you can look at it. It's a really great starting spot as you're looking for, how do I get more about this? I just pulled a couple pieces out of there that I really like. And I think it's this first paragraph. All right. We know, and let's just take 2 steps back. Many of us are already using AI in a variety of different things. Many of us are already using AI in our lending. We're really talking about here, how do we understand generative AI and the future state it's going to give? And I think the big piece here is it's going to give us a future that really we might possibly not even be able to imagine. You know, John does a wonderful job of helping us understand our future state, but for many of us, it's like, I want to get there, but I'm not exactly sure how. So we have to be really mindful of how we do this. I want to talk about it in 3 words that really help us kind of level set the language. The first one is, what will be AI's impact on the members? What will it be on our credit union mission? And what will it be on our margin? Very kind of really good ways to just level set. So on our members, clearly this will help us not only deeper understand, but possibly create new products, new services, new experiences that really at the end of it are going to give us competitive advantage. I mean, talk about playing field. We already rock what we do because we're mission-based financial institutions, but just imagine what we can do as we can go to scale on that. So then obviously from the mission perspective, again, being mission-based financial institutions, we now can deliver customized, tailored guidance, holy smokes, wherever and whenever to everyone. We've been struggling with that for a long time. And think about the ability of saying, hey, member, I understand that you've been doing buy now, pay later, and you actually don't have the funds for that. Let's figure out how we help you automate that so you can stop and get out of this situation. Ooh, what's another one? Hey, you might be in an environment where that cost of housing is obscene. I don't know, that's kind of how it feels like here in Southern California. So you might even have rent increases and maybe mortgage payments that are increasing. How do we help you get in front of it? All of that goodness. Clearly, we have to drive something from the financial perspective. We can start being leading economies of scale. We can achieve more with the people we have. I don't know about you, but the war on talent has felt crazy pants. And yes, and that's a technical term. So how do we get more from what we have? We can start really building in productivity and efficiency. This will help us with the competition and the competitive advantage, as well as identifying new sources of revenue. All right, so kind of that's cool, Anne, but lead me in a little bit further. Okay.
So, Anne, that was something that was highly discussed at our innovation club was the death of NIM, right?
Yeah.
And the idea, I think it was Vibrant Credit. I don't think Pete's
Yes.
on here,
Yes. Yes.
but
Yes. It
they were
was.
the ones that were, they're selling what coffee and
Yeah.
sandwiches.
Yeah.
And, just a question though, that was something I was thinking about with regard to what you're doing here. It was fascinating to me to think about, you know, how that's going to work, because presumably you're going to get past sort of the first stage scenario
Yeah,
and of, well, we're doing it and it's working, to where you're trying to squeeze margin even out of coffee and sandwiches, right? And it seems like, you know, um, this is going to be a big part of it, right? This sort
huge,
of approach.
huge, huge. Let's anchor on exactly what you talked about there, John. What we want to be thinking about is how do we operationalize so we can productize, so we can monetize. And John, let's go back in time with you. One of the things you realized right away is, hey, I can create a new home banking system. And then how do I sell that to everybody else?
Right.
Think about it on that smaller scale. What if there's something that I create? What if it's something that's powerful that, whoa, that is actually something other credit unions need? Or it's something else we do, right? I mean, we're talking about what ifs, but 100%, we don't really think about how do we, really operationalize and productize and monetize.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. We have to
Yeah,
be thinking.
it's not something that's sort of built into us, because those are all related to sales.
Yes, as well as how a technology startup thinks about that is their pitch. I have
Right.
to monetize, I have to productize, and I have to monetize because I'm going to do an ask. And we don't think about it that way. But
No, no, we're far more, but we do think far more ahead in than them with regard to service. We can marry these two together, we're way ahead of the game.
okay, so speaking of that, let me show some technologies that do exactly that. So from our members' perspective, we want to be thinking about chatbots, virtual assistants, intelligent contact centers, personalization, content moderation. Those are all easy pieces. Those are things that we kind of were dancing around earlier. From the mission, conversational search, virtual advisors, text summarization. Wouldn't it be cool that your board report and you're going through it, and instead of having to go through all the pages, you could literally narrative and say, so how much money do we make? How much money do we lose? What does that look like? Let me understand the board report from a narrative experience as opposed to from this page flipping experience we may already have. Holy smokes, having a whole conversational search on just our board report as we're talking with the board. Think about the different dynamic insights you'd get. Clearly we're talking about processing, obviously, automation, productivity, quality control, visual inspection. I mean, synthetic data training. I mean, these are things that can help us very, very quickly move forward, but we have to think about it in ways that is essential to us. And John just mentioned, we can't be thinking about it in sort of the ways we used to, right? Oh, it's sort of a linear progression. No, 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 no. This is faster. This is different. And this is an actual asset, not only to solve the problem we have today, but potentially to build something we may sell or have future value. We don't really think about having the ability to build for future value. And that's exactly what AI, generative AI specifically, is giving us the opportunity to do. So let's talk through some of the things you need to be thinking about as you do this. So first of all, you got to have a strategy. You definitely need to figure out what are those success metrics, because we're at a spot where if we're going to go in this, we have to definitely have some space on what business problem what business problem is this going to solve? How am I measuring my success? How am I bringing up literacy within my organization? And also, how am I managing for risk and quality? So these are huge, and we have to be very, very, very mindful that that's what we're talking about. Now, this should align up to a data strategy you already have, or if not, it should line up to your organizational strategy, right? We're all trying to grow. We're trying to find new opportunities. John mentioned about how we're handling, the NIM issue. These are all things we are struggling with. So how are we going to add AI to that? Well, what is the strategy? What do we want to be doing? How do we identify the success metrics? How do we cultivate our culture? How do we have these questions? And that's what we should be having the questions on, as opposed to which tool. No, let's figure out these pieces first and talk about what we're trying to use the tool for. AI, generative AI, is a tool. It's a little bit like a microwave. Hey, if I say I want to be able to making the most amazing Michelin 5-star restaurant meal, I'm not going to be buying a microwave. I need a kitchen and probably a chef. But if I'm saying, you know what, I want to get a decent meal prepared and I want to be able to do it in 10 minutes or less, maybe the microwave is the tool I need. If I talk about what I'm trying to do first, this will help me identify the best solution. It is so easy, so beautifully easy to get sideswiped by all the cool tools we have. I mean, heck, I loved being at the Innovation Club where I just sat there and pretty much was just in awe and felt like a kid in a candy store. But then I have to step back and go, okay, what am I going to use that for, right? So let's walk through, strategy. What do you need to be thinking about? Well, clearly it's your current condition. Again, why? What is your why? Why are you considering it? What's the problem that you're looking for? Hey, part of this is we're going to get a lot of insight from this, 100%. So how literate is our credit union to be able to take that? What about risk? We really have to be mindful this is risky on a couple ways. And how do we manage quality? John gave a really good example earlier of saying, hey, what if I do this? And what if I find out the data's not good? Or what if I find out that this isn't good? I'm gonna have to go back. Many times we build it and we don't realize it is a beautiful data feedback loop. We're creating something so that we're continually helping to improve it and make it better. And it might even be not this iteration, but something else we find in the next iteration. So we have to be mindful of all these pieces. I know you guys, a few of you are on chat. I'd love to hear for just a minute, what are the problems that you're having right now? What are you looking to solve? And ideally, AI. Fraud, yes. Oh my gosh, Sean, 100%. Fraud is outrageous, especially as we were talking about with deepfakes, with it. John, what is the amount of time you need to be able to imitate my voice? Isn't it just insanely low?
Yeah, it's like 2 minutes now, maybe less. I could get less than 2 minutes of you talking, which I just did because we're recording this. And
Exactly.
I could be you pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, that's the medium right now. But the worst part is not only with what I have from video from you, I could impersonate you on the Zoom call.
You could be me. Now, I think it's Sora, right? That's the one that's doing the video real quickly. And
No, well, Sora and HeyGen, but Sora
yeah,
is actually generating video.
right.
HeyGen is the one that generates your voice and takes video of you and just creates
Me.
whatever you want. And
Yep.
it's ridiculous what it can
Yes.
do. So fraud, I think, is a big one. And employee knowledge management, I think Troy's really got a good point there. That's a big one too,
Yep.
because everything's changing so quickly.
Right. So, an example I have in kind of case study to just exactly what Troy's talking about is, hey, I am trying to ask my staff, especially from the front line, right? Let's just go right there. I'm trying to ask them, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Hey, look, we've got 300, you know, standard operating procedures that you're supposed to be intimately familiar with. And we hope at any point in time you recall that. Hey, there is no way, right? So if I had the ability to bring that into a narrative language and say, okay, I'm doing this, and immediately not only do I get the information that is in that standard operating procedure, so now I'm doing it to what I should be doing. If there are issues in maybe our procedures, we can also write to make sure we can understand what's happening in those procedures to update them, of course, with our manual structure of how do we do this and what do we do this, but imagine the amount of knowledge we can share and improve, which is exactly what you're talking about, Troy, which is, hey, how do I upskill everybody so we can start doing different things? Fraud is going to be huge, and we've got to understand that risk, and that risk is there now. We also have to understand that we do have a lot of internal pieces before maybe we send it out externally. When we think about fraud and we think about risk, we do have to think about quality, right? We do have to say, what would be that loop? How do I put in quote unquote bumpers to help myself? I really shouldn't be buying anything unless I'm talking about just the scope of this and what it would look like. So I'm leaving these questions for you to be able to say, these are the ones we should be discussing and starting off our conversation. Again, not saying we have it all boiled up, but boy, this is the first starting spot. Okay, let's really anchor on those whys, okay? As we come
It's
up
just
with those,
this feels very Simon Sinek. I like it.
no, you're very welcome. Because I'm going to take Simon, I'm going to add little and Legg to it. So if we're going to start with our why, right? What is it that we're trying to do? What's going to give us the most significant impact? How does this align to our organizational goals? Hey, we can start thinking about metrics, right? Start thinking about how this aligns to business objectives. Is this problem we're talking about? And if we do this, does it help with member engagement? And what does that look like? Does it help us reduce cost or expand what we're doing? And this is where I add the and Legg to this. if you don't have a why, you can't have an ROI. And we really have to be so mindful. I know that was super cheesy, but stay with me. You have to be thinking about that, because if we're not saying, what is this tied to for our business objectives? It's nothing but beautiful technology. It's nothing but a beautiful microwave. And hey, I love my microwave, but boy, that thing works really hard in my kitchen because I'm so not a chef. So thinking about it, we do have to go back to those existing KPIs and say, what is it going to move? And how do we think it's going to move? Because if we're not talking about that, again, we're just talking about this is cool, but it's got to have actionable impact. And we'd ideally like it to have member impact. Okay, so as I look at that, right, I talked about your KPIs. Let's make sure that we are thinking about member engagement, production, revenue growth. We think about these KPIs every day as we look at our overall scorecards and success metrics, as well as, you know, our board. But we have to be thinking about how this works. I like that. John says, I need to have a shirt and a coffee cup giveaway. Yes. If you don't have a why, you do not have an ROI. I think so. I can totally give you up an image on that. In fact, we could probably in a that makes me look really good too.
Yeah, well, and I think you're following it right up the other thing. Yeah, if you don't know what success looks like before you start,
Yes.
there's probably a good rhyme in there too. But yeah,
Right. I'm
you
not going
don't.
to.
Oh, if you don't have KPI, your product will die. We'll just keep this going. I'm good.
Right.
I can make
This
this
is
up.
how we do it.
I'm going to write a song about it while we wait with AI.
And use AI so that we can sing it back at the end. Okay. So the part about this again is allowing us to focus, and this might feel really structured. That's the whole point. We've got to have these structured conversations about what we're doing, or really we're spending money or we're kind of spinning. But we have to start, and we have to start with those pain points. What are we going to do, and how do we measure it for success? And what do we expect it to do? Okay, well, then we got the people component. So again, where is the home of your data, right? Where's the home of this going to live? Let's just stick with creating some sort of a beautiful narrative bot that's going to allow us to understand all of our standard operating procedures. Where would that live? Who's going to have access to it? Who's going to have rights to it? Most importantly, who's monitoring that for risk and for quality? If we don't talk about these types of things, we sort of just hope. And John, you can attest to this, it'll just land somewhere, such as IT, who's got, oh, so much ample time. Heck no. Who's
You
trying
know,
to figure
it's funny you say that because that's what we've always done. It's either IT or accounting, right? ATMs
yeah,
were orphaned in the beginning. Data
right.
analytics was kind of popped around, and I feel like
Yep.
it's always bouncing between one of those two places. Right now, I did see ATMs bounce over to facilities a couple times, um, but yeah, you're right. When we don't know, and it's interesting because I do think what you're saying is very true, that lack of structure, deciding where that structure is really it's really one of the things that will determine your success in the end. Because if these people don't have enough a seat at the table or aren't accessible enough, or because every time it's not that anybody does this on purpose, but if it is that you wind up um, you wind up having something that's under one of these departments, their priorities, like it or not, are going to be skewed to that department. It's just human nature. It's not anybody trying to
Hmm.
disenfranchise anyone. It's just the way it is.
And let's anchor on that for a minute, because let's just talk about the credit union. We have all these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous silos, right? We have the tech silo, finance, we have operations, we have marketing. They are disciplines within the credit union. And yes, I'm making that look like a tower there, right? Why? Because they are silos. And the challenge is, if something goes in a silo and it isn't working with a cross-functional team, it's going to stay in the silo and it's going to be communicated in the silo. We've got to stop that. AI is going to touch a lot. It has the opportunity to touch a lot, and it has an opportunity to touch a lot of different ways and a lot of different places. So let's figure out what that home, that operational structure is, who's going to be in there. And it might be in a series like, okay, who's going to be that sponsor? Who's going to be the person who's going to be accountable? And what are some of the other core areas? So I give this framework up to you to say, who's going to champion it, right? Who's the person who says, we're going to do it? And it's usually pretty much the one of the more senior people. All right, who's going to sponsor it? That might be somebody who says, okay, I'm going to sponsor, which means I will hold accountability. Cool. who in the room needs to say yes? And there's quite a few people like, John was saying, hey, if something goes in the tech world, the tech virtual, some people are just going to sit there and go, this is awesome, but I'm only looking at it in my one area of expertise. All right. Then I do something and then somebody goes, well, that doesn't work for me. Well, that's because we're only building it to work for one area. Who else in the room needs to understand what you're doing and who gets to say yes to it? But there's a whole nother layer. And John, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. We do have promoters and we do have detractors. And AI seems to be one of those lightning rod conversations of people are like, I get it, let's go. And I have people that freaks the heck out of me. When you look at it in your experience, John, please share with me a little bit about how you see other promoters and how do you see the detractors?
Yeah, it's a lot like data analytics. It has some bearing there when, we were kind of trying to decide sort of in the 2010s, what we were going to use data for. And I know that there was this fear of being creepy. There was a fear of being Big Brother. There was a lot of things out in that space that kind of caused that. I think in this, there's a similar kind of concept, but for the first time ever, there's also a concern that we've never had before, which is that this thing could sort of get loose. And it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a cultural thing at the moment, because there's big concern that, from what we've seen, the hallucinations and stuff, that there's a possibility it may decide that to kind of go in on its own. And that's one big fear I see. The other, the people who are the advocators, they're advocating this. What I've seen mostly from that is they seem to be advocating in a responsible way that doesn't they're not saying, hey, let's just throw this out to the members. I think the fraud one is a big one. I mean, we've been using AI and fraud for hundreds of years. Falcon, it's just this is a different version of it and a different way to go about it. I think that the employee knowledge management that was mentioned earlier is a really big one. And these are all sort of inside facing things with less risk.
Yeah.
But I haven't ever seen the closest thing I've seen to this was sort of the data analytics combined with the marketing,
Yes.
where there was
Yeah.
some concern about sort of seeming creepy by using data. And there was a time when Canadians were really opposed to using sort of third-party data like Facebook or
Yep.
social media again, just because they were trying to avoid being sort of creepy there. The other
Yep.
area that I'll just throw out there is, and this is one you were talking about earlier, that, you know, the tendency in our industry is that a lot of our board members are volunteers, and a lot of them are older volunteers from the companies that we seg for. But the board really is a big place as well, where I did see some of these things go to die
Yeah.
because they were, I think this is the good news is the two projects I just mentioned are not big money projects. So you can do those
Right.
without having to go to the board
Right.
and you're not really creating an impact. But there's going to come a time when you're going to want to integrate, you're going to have to integrate these chatbots. We talked about Klarna. You
Yeah.
remember the Klarna
Yes.
article?
Yep. Yep.
Klarna replaced, I think, three-fourths of their agents with basically ChatGPT type agents,
Yeah.
and they're reporting phenomenal success.
Yeah.
But if you went to, I think, any of our boards and said, that's what we're going to try to do, I don't think they'd say right off the bat no, but I do think that they would, I think they'd have a lot of questions. And I think that educational portion of this that you're kind of, I think, getting to here and spoke about before is important. But that's what I've seen with it.
Okay. So
Well,
let's
the internet was another one that was a little,
right.
uh, well, we don't, that's a fad. Same thing with mobile banking. So I guess anything that's really a new channel
Yes.
or a new way of doing business is generally some concern. But I've never seen the kerfluffle that I've seen over this.
Right. And I think to your point, it has to do with the fact that in the horizon we've been and in the way tech is accelerating and usage, this is our equivalent television. This is the first time we're like, oh my God, I can see anything and do anything I want. And there's that thing right there that does that. So 100%. And then let's take a couple steps back on this. When you're thinking about promoters and detractors, which audience? Is it across your leadership? Is it down in business units? Is it down in the front line? Is it up in the board? Rarely do we ever talk about understanding who are promoters and who are detractors on something new. Because as credit unions, that feels kind of uncomfortable to be like, ooh, somebody's not gonna like it. You guys, this is obvious. And here's why we have to understand, because these people, our entire beautiful talent and our board is who's helping us make these decisions to help our member. And if we don't honestly say, what are you freaked out about? And what I've been hearing is something John kind of hinted on. He gave us that beautiful understanding of technology. But one of the pieces I keep hinting on is we're going to lose staff. AI is going to take over so-and-so's job, and that they're the breadwinner, and we can't let them go. We really have to understand those pieces, which is similar to kind of the objections we heard about, marketing automation and CRM and, the creepy fact. But we have to understand that we're going to be doing this. So how do we do it the best we can? And how do we understand how people are going to be using it? Ooh, great question. Thoughts on AI and lending and fair lending? Yes. Let me take that one for just a minute, and then I'd love to make sure we get John's feedback. So one of the things that's really cool about the Zest, the Synaptics, the different organizations out there that are saying, hey, let me look at your lending portfolio and let me find new pockets of opportunity. One of the things I like about this is that they say, first and foremost, before you make any decisions, here, give us our data. I want to see how you're doing it. And then I'm going to send you up a whole bunch of opportunity you might have already turned down. I love this because nobody's touched it all. We get to look at that data up front. We get to say, oh my gosh, you're right. We get to run it through as many vigorous decision channels that we currently use and say, you know what, you're right. You found this pocket. So it allows us to get a ton of confidence on what we want to do. The nice thing about these AI and fair lending is we have to have the audits and the metrics in there to stop us from doing that. That goes back to risk and quality. When we bring on a tool, we have to say, look, where do we get the audits? How do we know it's auditing? In some cases, you'll actually have the ability where you will get audits almost on a daily basis. So you can see if there's anything you need to, so there's a human behind this. What's fascinating about the lending and using AI to help you identify new pockets of opportunity is you do get the chance to do and look and see at that all way before you'd ever go out and ever extend anything to those members. You also get the chance to look and do it in tiny incremental pockets that will make you feel more comfortable, right? So you can say, you know what, I'm ready to go into that group we found and maybe test it. Maybe just test and see how that goes and let that run longevity. And then maybe I'll add a model to it to see, let's see how the risk score is going, and let's see how their repayment and basically allowing the credit union to gain confidence and a little bit of capability around, yeah, we can do this. John, what would you kind of add to looking at AI specifically in lending and definitely in making sure that you manage fair lending?
I think that piece I've been talking about called XAI, which is explainable AI,
Yep.
that's really an up and coming term that we need to get familiar with. I think it's going to be part of the regulatory environment.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, the NCUA, from what I know and the folks I've talked to, they're all about us sort of gaining these efficiencies and using these things. We have to be able to explain it. And explainable AI is going to be far different than explainable, the current decision logic and the way we explain it now. So let me give you an example. Let's say, Anne, you apply for a job and we see that your company is Thrive and that you are a owner of that,
Yep.
right? Not a
Yep.
job alone, sorry.
Yep.
And as you know, as I do, being a company owner really kind of changes things in your lending and how you go about things. Now,
Totally.
today, there's not really any work done to determine whether your business is viable or not, right?
Right.
But I could see that and one of the reasons it's not done is because it's the same reason that commercial lending is a separate process than regular, than natural person lending and the assets that we lend on now. And it's because doing any kind of company work. But what if in the future, AI takes a look at your job and your job title, particularly if AI is disenfranchising people from their jobs, right? So we see that you work for NVIDIA and
Yep.
you're an engineer, then you are going to have, from what, and we could have a process with an AI that does company evaluations because we're looking to see what your ability to pay is, right? And your job is a big part of that. That's why we want pay stubs and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but then how are you going to explain? Let's say we could go both ways, right? Anne gets the loan, and
Right.
she works for this incredible company, but uh, then NVIDIA tanks and everybody from NVIDIA, AI wakes up and does something horrible, NVIDIA is blamed, they fall
Right.
apart.
Right.
And so, they go the way of Meta, that has seen these sorts of things. And you have to explain how you got to that decision process. And it's not going to be this tree of logic that we're used to. It's going to be, this was calculated in these nodes using this data, this information, and then it was, it's just going to be very different. And so something to consider, I think, is explainable AI.
And to kind of anchor on that a little bit, we sort of think that from AI lending, we just think it's a cool black box. Put the data in there, figure it out. No, you have to understand you have to understand to be able to explain what's in the black box. You don't have to tell how it's made. You have to be like, this is what we do and this is what we look at it. And, John was just talking about how does a company get funding? Cabbage has been out there for years saying, look, we don't actually want to run credit score on you. We just want to say, you have a company, do you have inventory? Show us how much inventory you're pushing out. And then we'll give you 5K, done. We too can create our own scores based on a variety of different fashions. Not just, we can take our existing, FICO or TransUnion, whichever score we want. We can also add on components to that to help understand and bring in more loans. Again, we have to be thinking about that. We also have to be very, very mindful about our regulation and how we audit on that. And again, all of this is doable. And who's to say that there's not going to be a cool AI function that will say, we can audit all of your loans right now and tell you if they are.
Well,
Yeah,
your point's really interesting because think about Klarna.
yes,
So Klarna
yep,
is, really investing in that AI process, and
right.
they're, buy now, pay later, which all of us of a certain age do not understand at all, right? Isn't that just called a credit card? But okay. Um,
Layaway.
so
Buy later is layaway.
right, I remember Layaway. I used to that was my second job ever was running Layaway at TJ Maxx. It was fun. But the point of the whole thing is that, for me anyways, is that um, buy now, pay later is a loan that's created during the checkout process in some cases. And
Yep.
one of the challenges is that the one of the challenges I think is that their speed, right? That's why they have to do things after the fact. But if they're investing in this, then that speed could really be pushed up, and that means they could be making more loans, which could impact our credit card, process. So interesting stuff.
Well, and to just add on to that with buy now, pay later, I think it was Visa that came out earlier this week that said, look, unfortunately, the people that are using buy now, pay later are not using it just to kind of manage cash flow and say, hey, I'm going to break this up into 4 payments. They're actually people who've already maxed out their existing credit cards and are trying to figure out how to use it. So we know there's data out there that says some of the people, and this was kind of our fear, who are using buy now, pay later are people who we're really concerned about because they shouldn't be. They actually don't have the money, not today and not tomorrow, to pay for this. And as a credit union, we want to figure out who they are and get in front of it. So like, what could we be doing? So there's a lot of pieces going around on that. I kind of want to take a hot minute and walk through, the culture piece. We've got culture and we want to make sure we also talk through risk. When we think about what we're doing with AI, just to what John was saying about the different tools and technologies and the different technology timeline we went through, we have to make sure we're sharing out what we're doing, and we can't share it out unless we don't know what we're doing it for, right? So we need to have a very clear roadmap. We're using this to help this. We hope we're looking to get a return on this. This is going to be our time frame, and this is who's going to be involved. Very easy. If we don't have that, we are now going to create ourselves up for a whole lot of movies your talent is going to put in their heads, which is like, oh my gosh, we're doing AI. The AI rots are going to take over my job. We don't need and have time for any of that. So let's start off number one and say, when I jump in, I'm going to have a very easy communication roadmap. Timelines, milestones, phases. Next up, I know I'm going to probably be doing some training. Why don't I talk about who's going to be, who needs to use it, how do we use it, how does it work? This goes back, I think, to the fair lending piece. What's our best practices, and are we concerned about any ethical issues? Are there going to be any flags, and what would those flags potentially look like? And how do we make sure that we have a bead on some of these red flags? We do know that as we bring in this, we have to be thinking about quick wins. We've got to make sure that it is going to turn around what we said it's going to do in the time that it's going to do. So as we think about using generative AI, we have to be thinking about what are those use cases that are going to be powerful. I mean, obviously, the standard operating procedure one is a fantastic one that's very internal, but it's really hard to say, gosh, at the end of the day, this is a wonderful, 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 I think that might have been 3 or 4 wonderfuls, collaboration on ongoing dialogue. How are we using this for today, for tomorrow, for culture building? Let me also make sure we manage our risks. Okay, we do have to make sure we are very mindful of what we're doing, right? Security, privacy, controls. Is it encrypted? Where are we storing it? Working with third parties. Who are they? Have they been audited? Can they share that they're okay to work with? Because if something goes down there, and I'll give an example in a minute, generative AI, validation, that goes back to, I think, what we're talking about with lending. Let's make sure we have that. Bias mitigation, that's very huge in fair lending. Who's liable? Continuously monitoring the framework, right? Like, what is that? We should be definitely, if many more than maybe, if not quarter, at least twice a year, having an annual risk assessment. Let me give you an example. And I think we talked a little bit about this last time. There's an airline out there that an airline flyer had said, oh my gosh, I need to quickly get a bereavement flight, which is, unfortunate. You have to get on a flight, you have to get on the next flight. And sometimes it's very cost prohibitive. Some airlines will say, we understand that that's a situation and we can give you a little bit of a discount when you have taken the flight and then you get the documentation we request. We can show that, yes, that was for, a situation, and thank you for the proper documentation, and we'll give you a discount. So there was a person who's going on flight and looked up these policy, on the airline, and said, okay, using their chatbot, what is your bereavement policy? What would I need? I'm going to be going to unfortunately the passing of a family member. What do I do, right? Well, the interesting piece on this was that the chatbot came back and said, hey, you've got 90 days. This is what we need. No big deal. Luckily, the person was like, that's kind of cool. I'm just going to take screenshots on this just for my own brain so I have it. Well, they came back, they go back to the airline, and they're like, hey, your chatbot, screenshot, said I do this. Here's your documentation. Well, this is where it gets a little bit third party and a little bit liability. Well, the airline says that's actually not our bereavement policy. That's another airline's bereavement policy, which goes to John's point of the AI went out and pulled everything from the internet and said, here's a bereavement policy. Did not just go and scope on our bereavement policy. And then you're like, well, we bought that bot. So is it the bot that's liable? No. It is a credit union. You bought that bot. So we have to be thinking about how we think about these things, and we need to have these checklists to say, okay, let's have some conversation about bias. Is there some? Isn't there? All right, liability. We're buying this third party. They say it's cool. We will be liable in certain, both in reputation risk, but also maybe in other things. How do we make sure we manage for that? My point here is this is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's a really good checklist to say, this is how I need to start thinking about risk. John, is there anything else you would add as you think about risk? We'll run with that. Okay, you should
Sorry,
get
I've been
that.
thinking a lot. Sorry, I tried to go in there. I've been thinking a lot about overdependency on it. Like, I worry that very similar, and we were talking about this story. I'll be quick because we've got to get to the giveaway here in a minute. But kids who go to jail, or anybody that goes to jail anymore, they take your phone and nobody knows phone numbers anymore. And so they say you got 2 calls. Now anymore, when they bring you in, not saying I know how I know this, just leave me alone. But now they say, hey, if you need phone numbers in here, you better get them out before we take this from you. And so you do. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, if we become overly dependent upon these things, because they will fall out, fail, have problems.
Yeah,
It's no different than the automation that we've experienced before, but just something that I had thought about.
that's excellent. And with that, I think that's where we need to make sure we're evaluating technology. What are the considerations we should have, right? Where is it? And I love that. Where are our dependencies? Like, not only to make this work, but as an organization, what needs to be in there? What skill sets should we have? How are we going to be understanding the use cases for this? We should have been starting off with our why. We know that, but there's going to be more. So how do we understand? And I love this last line. How do we understand the true realized impact for 24 months? Because we should be using it that long. So this goes back to if there isn't a why, there isn't an ROI, and I need to make sure I have this. That kind of rolls up that first section. I will put a link. I'll send the link on over to the town hall, so you get that whole thing. The second part of this does walk through, and we clearly don't have time for that today, a whole bunch of different examples. I do have an example of a credit union that it is using the standard operating procedure situation. I do have a credit union that's working on the one around how do I take information that's happening in real time and start doing some action in real time. I do also have an example of how you can take and create a voice automated attendant, which is pretty sweet. And sounds exactly like a human. And that's one of the things we get to wrestle with. And then I do also have a sample in there that talks a little bit about AI that's creating AI. All right. Melissa, done the shout out.
What did you say? AI? It's creating AI? It's not like looking into a mirror that's looking into a mirror or something. Doesn't that wind up taking you back in time or something? Alternate universes. All right. Well, Anne, I think you brought up so many good points. I think we're all wrestling with that. So, I love the other part that you got to treat this like a process.
Yeah.
And to learn from our mistakes from all the past things we've done, I think that's a very valuable thing. All right, well, let's get it. I got 2 songs ready if we get there, but let's get to the giveaway and then I'll play us out with the music. I got you 2 ROI songs for you to listen to.
Yes.
Because if you don't have a why,
you don't got an ROI.
Does anybody else want in on this? It's $100 gift card. And there's 4 people.
Oh my gosh, 25% success rate. Love it.
Yeah, you can't go in, Ann, sorry.
I
but
know.
Anybody else, if you want in, put your name in. Now's the time.
That's the on-time music.
That was the no, that's Jeopardy.
Yeah.
All right, going once. All right, we're spinning. Larry's like, don't be adding people. My odds.
Man.
Chris.
What? Very cool.
All right. Chris, make sure you get with our team and get your information over. And how are we going to find you and get to you and see some of the things that you just mentioned? How do we go about that?
So you're going to go and visit AnnLeggThrive.com. You're also going to go and reach out to me. You're going to see me on LinkedIn, which is also Ann Thrive at LinkedIn, but you're also going to reach out to me. And I'm going to put this in the chat box right now. Let me give you my email and you can reach out to me at any point in time you want.
All right. While you're doing that, I am going to, and by the way, I cannot highly recommend Ann enough. A lot of times when people come in to do this kind of work, that it can be, like she said, there are detractors and she understands that. She's really good at coming into a place and really just understanding the culture immediately and driving things forward and getting results. So, all right, I'm done. I'm off my soapbox, but that's my 2 cents. All right, here's the screen. Wait, I got to go back and share it again because I didn't. God, it's so stupid that I got to click that button. New layout and options. Is there a sound option in here? Share, optimize, share sound. Yes, and they even moved it one place further back. Great. All right, here we go. So the first one is a glam rock one. You want to get, or 80s glam rock, but you definitely want to get to the chorus. I tried to start it somewhere close to the chorus, but it doesn't like me to scrub. You get to the chorus. That's a good one.
I kind of feel a little Mellencamp there.
What's that?
Little John Cougar Mellencamp there. I'm feeling I could do that. Maybe.
I was hoping for a little more, like I was going for Bon Jovi, but
okay.
Here's this one.
Glitching sounds,
Hang on, let me get to the chorus here.
Saving grace. Pixels dancing.
Oh, hang on.
Let your soul be
Here it goes. Here's the chorus.
Where is your why? Don't let it fade. In this glitched out symphony.
Anyways.
find your shade.
All right. Well, can't thank everybody enough for joining. I know it's a tough week. We're right and hidden into summer, and everybody's kind of finding their way around. But Anne, thank you for taking the time to share with us, and thank you everyone for joining us. And we'll talk soon.
Got it. See everybody. Take care now.
Take care. I'll send you these songs, Anne.
You got it. Thank you.
All right, bye.